Welcome to the complete animation of Dante from 101 Dalmatian Street. I'm just gonna say it. I think that this is probably the second best show that came out in 2019. Obviously, the very best being Gendy Tartakovsky's Primal. But yeah, um, I'll just go out and say it. I think that these first episodes of the show are not really good. They feel like a pilot or like too much trying to explain how the world that they live in works. But I think it does it just too heavy-handedly. It's like they spend way too much time explaining things like the kibble pump or what it's like trying to get the entire, family of 101 Dalmatians to actually get outside during a snowstorm. It's like, yeah, the first episodes really don't do it for me, story-wise. Visually, I think that they do a pretty good job of explaining the show, though I do think that later episodes are better animated anyway. So yeah, 101 Dalmatian Street. This is a really interesting show. The art style is very modern. It's like it really leans into the things that are possible by being a 2D animation, but all made within computers. And I really like the backgrounds. The backgrounds are really something else. They really lean into abstraction in the backgrounds with things like, modeled borders to things. They really lean into just abstracting into basic shapes for things that are in the far distance. I don't know that you'll see any of it in this video, but landscapes in this show are really good. Just the way that it takes, just these rectangles basically, and really sells the impression of having buildings in the background. It's really good. And yeah. But speaking of the narrative, the stories that this show tells are, it's like they're very sitcom-y. It's like the narratives that they tell are the kinds of things that you would expect from, some sort of a live action show on Disney Channel. But I think that it knows that it's telling sitcom-y stories, and it knows what the tropes of the genre are, and just that little bit of self-awareness helps it to have stories that are actually enjoyable. And there's a bunch of episodes that really help to differentiate itself from just a mere sitcom. A good example is The Walls Are Alive. In that episode, it's able to, have the, kid-friendly horror story, where it, and then like the obvious twist is that at the end, there's a logical explanation that keeps things from being too scary. But like honestly, that episode I think is probably one of my favorites because of how it's able to lean into the show's art style and do some things with its animation that are very unique. It's like, I really think that the reason that they wanted to make that episode is so that the animators would just have an excuse to take the character model of Dolly and just do crazy awesome things with it. Like, she's just floating through the air, going in through all these different angles. Yeah. It's like, when you think of modern cartoon art styles, it's like, this show doesn't look like anything else out there. It is so unique, but it's very modern. But if you look at other things that people say are like, oh, this is modern animation and the art style is all the exact same, they're usually thinking of things like the classic Star versus the Forces of Evil and Steven Universe and Gravity Falls. It's like all three of those, their human faces, especially their human mouths, do the exact same thing. It's like, the Cal Arts bean faces and bean mouths. But 101 Dalmatian Street, it is thoroughly modern, but it doesn't fall into any of those traps. And I really like it because of that. It's like, when I look at a TV show, like, I won't look at it unless it's visually appealing to me. It's like, I'll see about it and I'll be like, oh, that art style doesn't even interest me. And if it doesn't interest me, I won't check it out. It's like, there's a ton of TV shows that I'm sure that if I decided to actually start watching them, I would probably like the story because, they're popular and people say that they like them because of the stories. But like, I'm not going to invest time in a TV show unless the art style immediately grabs me. And 101 Dalmatian Street grabbed me the first time I saw it. And the very first episodes I saw of this show were the first episodes of the show. And in retrospect, those episodes are the weakest of the entire series. But the art style made me persevere. So yeah, this show looks really good. These shots of this particular video, the complete animation of Dante, doesn't do a whole lot to sell you on that because it's all cropped in close and yeah. But yeah, speaking of Dante, he's an interesting character. He's probably the third oldest of the siblings. I think, or he's up there. It's like, within the 101 Dalmatian Street Dalmatian family, there are two main characters, Dylan and Dolly, and then and they're basically the oldest of the siblings, and so they are often in charge of the younger ones. And Dante is, just by sheer size, probably around their age as well. Yeah, so, but Dante he has an interesting character design. He's like an inverted Dalmatian where um, everything is black except his spots. And then he also plays the role of, the pessimist, the gloomy guy. Um, he doesn't do it like quite so on the nose as Eeyore for being gloomy. A bunch of the time he's just scared of everything and paranoid. But yeah, I think that within that character archetype, Dante, he's got some interesting things to put into that. For one thing, he's very talkative. It's like characters like this, you might think them to be, the shy loner sort of a thing, but no. Dante, he'll talk to people. He's very sociable. Just he's paranoid. His first scene shows him being all doom and gloom about things. Some people remarked that Dante predicted 2020 and the global pandemic. I think that's just serendipity, obviously. Yeah, and I think that the voice actors in this show do a really good job. Like, and it's very interesting because some of the voice actors are clearly not British, and the show does a very simple thing that they never explicitly talk about in the show itself, and that is that it's pretty obvious that Doug and Delilah, the two parents in the show, they got married later and they had kids of their own. And so it's like, and Doug is obviously an American voice actor. And so what you get is a very clean explanation as to why they do live in London, but not all of them have British accents, because some of them aren't from Great Britain, but like they never explicitly say that in the show itself, and so so it's just sort of left up to people to either find that information elsewhere, where I do believe that it's explicitly spelled out like other places. But yeah. Another one of the interesting things I like is that whenever they do flashbacks in this show, they just take the character who's having the flashbacks, the silhouette of their head, and then they play the flashback within it. It's like, this show has just so many things that are unique artistic choices. I think that some of my favorite episodes are episodes like The Longest Night, where, again, the way that the beats in that episode could easily have been done in any other, live action Disney sitcom, but they do little things in there that only this show could do. Only this show could have, a camp out in a small park in London. It's like, you know, you can't camp in London. At least I don't think so. I've never tried. Of course, I've only had a layover in London, so I don't have much experience there. Um, and then there's just so many times when they lean into abstraction. I think that probably just visually the most impressive episode that they did with the backgrounds and things was the episode about Da Vinci, the sibling who's a real artist. There's a sequence there where, you know, the feelings of being crushed by the humans and their siblings just overwhelms her, and then, like, in her mind just shows the massive amount of stress. Like, yeah, it's all abstract and it's fun. Yeah. So coming up here is a scene where Cruella de Vil's nephew is trying to capture the whole family. And I gotta say that this character, his name is Hunter, I think that he's probably one of the weakest parts of the entire show. And the depiction of Cruella de Vil doesn't really stick it for me. I'm glad that they don't appear as often as they do. But yeah, I think that this show is at its best when it's just doing the sitcom-y stuff, but, you know, doing it its way. Like, I just don't think that Cruella de Vil or any part of her family really belongs in this show. It's like the first time you get into the thing, it's like it was pretty cool to start getting into the fact that they are descendants of the original family of dogs. You even get to see pictures of Pongo and Perdita. But yeah, thanks for watching.